At 11 o'clock in the evening of October 25th, 1917, Volodya Averbach was walking along a street just 100 meters away from the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. He was later to recall that the night was quiet and the city seemed dead.
We could even hear the echo of our own footsteps on the pavement.
And yet, records show that at 9:45 that evening, the naval cruiser Aurora had fired a blank shell to signal the start of an armed assault on the Winter Palace, where the provisional government was based. The assault continued until just after 2 o'clock in the morning on the 26th of October, when the inhabitants of the palace surrendered. During this time, 2 American journalists accompanied the revolutionaries. One of them, John Reed, who supported the Bolsheviks, was with a group of sailors in the square outside the Winter Palace at 2 o'clock in the morning of 26 October.
Like a black river, filling all the street, we poured through the Red Arch. In the open, we began to run, stooping low and bunching together. How many of you did they kill?
I don't know. About 10.
Another American journalist, Bessie Beatty, was in the square at the same time as Reed and with the same group of sailors, but her account is far less dramatic.
3 rifle shots shattered the quiet. We stood speechless, awaiting a return volley, but the only sound was the crunching of broken glass. Suddenly, a sailor emerged. "It's all over," he said. "They have surrendered."
Apart from the eyewitnesses, there were others who were receiving reports from people sent to observe events at the palace. In October 1917, Trotsky was second only to Lenin in the Bolshevik hierarchy. While the Winter Palace was being taken, he was receiving regular reports on what was happening.
The attack on the palace was opened by a few blank rounds being fired from the fortress, followed by a massed onslaught from all sides. Armored cars and machine guns firing at the palace from under the archway on the square.
Muriel Buchanan was daughter of the British ambassador to Russia. When the Winter Palace was being attacked, she was inside the British embassy, listening to the reports coming in from diplomatic staff and military observers.
The actual bombardment of the palace ceased at about 11. The women's battalion fought heroically till the last, though luckily they did not suffer any very severe casualties.
Muriel Buchanan's perspective on the fate of the women's battalion differs from that of Pavel Milyukov, an opponent of the Bolsheviks and a former foreign minister of the provisional government.
Those of the women's battalion who had not died under fire were seized by the Bolsheviks, subjected during that evening and night to the frightful attentions of the soldiers to violence and execution.
Finally, we come to the views of the historians about what happened and why. Here we have the views of Richard Pipes, a Polish-American historian who regarded himself as a Cold War warrior. He rejected any claim that what happened in October 1917 was a result of revolutionary action by the masses.
The Winter Palace was not taken by assault. The image of a column of storming workers, soldiers, and sailors, as depicted in Eisenstein's film Days of October, is pure invention, an attempt to give Russia its own Follow the Bastille.
By contrast, British historian Robert Service sees the events of 25th to 26 October 1917 as the culmination of a revolution that had gathered pace since February that year. There may have been a coup in late October, but it would not have been possible without a mass revolutionary movement to back it up.
As the situation worsened, so the workers, soldiers, and peasants took to direct political action. And so this Leninist seizure of power was an easy task. The masses had already completed most of the job for the Bolsheviks.
Roy Alexandrovich Medvedev, a Russian historian who was expelled from the Communist Party in the Soviet Union, presents an account quite similar to that of Trotsky.
On the evening of October 25th, the Bolsheviks assembled about 20,000 Red Guards, sailors and soldiers. There were no serious battles in the capital, and the total number killed on both sides was no more than 15, with no more than 60 wounded.
So what we see here is that pieces of evidence on this particular historical event do not necessarily corroborate each other. Doing history is not just about collecting facts on which we can all agree. It is also about how the information available to us is interpreted, by whom and why. A multi-perspective approach would reflect these differences in accounts. However, putting together all these perspectives does not necessarily provide us with a complete and accurate account of what happened. It is just the best that we can do with the evidence available. But we learned something about the nature of history, and that leads us to question some of the assumptions often made about the practice of history. For example, there is not always one correct version of what happened and why. Evidence about an event close to the time when it happened is not always more reliable than evidence gathered much later. Thirdly, evidence provided by the eyewitness is not necessarily or always more reliable or more valid than other sources. Fourthly, the same evidence can be interpreted differently by different historians depending on their point of view, the time when they were writing, and their views on the wider historical context of the times they are writing about.